Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast series, Everything They Taught Us Was a Lie, Episode 5, Part 2. Today, I want us to get out of our comfort zone. These podcasts, these episodes, are not your regular run-of-the-mill things that you will hear. We're here, Dorrit and I. Dorrit, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Dorrit Smith, her co-host.
And we are here to take you through a very, very courageous effort on our part to get you interested in what is it that we're not supposed to know. Why are most of us so apathetic towards our race, towards being black, towards being marginalized? What is it? So we're here to get you involved, to want to know more about who we are as a people now, who we were back then, and what the future can be like for us. Maybe another couple of years, 100 years, 500 years. So we're going to get into a topic today that we were onto from the last episode we did, which centered around a financial meltdown, the likes of which we have never seen happen in Jamaica. And Jamaica, being part of Africa and the African diaspora, every black person should want to know what really happened in the Jamaica financial meltdown. That should keep us riveted to this series. Everything they taught us was a lie. Yes, we can dance, and yes, we can sing, and yes, we can think about entertainment, but there are more serious issues that are going to have great impact on the unborn generations. Dorrit, what are we doing today?
Miss Val, I was just about to chip in
Yes.
that the time has come for us to look at things a little differently. Not just the sunrise every morning and set at night, but for us to get a little bit more involved in what affects us as a people. You know, like the dry bones in Ezekiel, I think it's time for us to wake up, shake up, and put on some flesh. In part 1, we were talking about the FinSac experience, and you were ably taking us through what happened in that financial situation, that meltdown as it is referred to. And I would like you to remind us what FinSac means and what it was supposed to adjust.
You see, the whole purpose of this particular experience that Jamaica went through is something that affects, I just want to take a moment here to say why everyone in Africa, everyone in the United States of America, the Caribbean, the entire diaspora should take note of, because colonialization and imperialism are like a mirror. And if you were to take a hammer and smash up that mirror into fine pieces, and you scatter some of that mirror, the pieces, in the US, in the West Indies, and you scatter some in Africa, and you scatter some wherever black people are, you will realize that the very same atrocities and cruelties that took place in one area where those splinters are, it's the same splinters that are elsewhere. And so this is why we need to realize that the injustice that happens to one of us is an injustice that is happening to all of us, because when we come together and unite and become that mirror, it is all the same atrocious experiences. So we're all one. And what affects one affects all.
I like that illustration about that mirror. That was so very ably put. We really want our audience to understand this FinSAC experience because some still have some weird ideas about what happened at in that period. So please, and we're inviting our audience to interact with us, ask questions, share your ideas.
It's necessary for us to do that because until we get a proper understanding, then nobody will really care as to why this experience was such a travesty of justice. So, to get right into it, what does FinSAC mean? FinSAC means the Financial Sector Adjustment Company. Why was there the need to adjust anything? It means that something bad had happened, and the government of the day, the P.J. Patterson-led government, thought it was a very, very important thing to try and adjust the financial sector with the intention to spare depositors in the banks and those people who had invested in insurance from the terrible downfall of the financial sector and the insurance industry in Jamaica. FinSAC, this company formed by the government, had a mandate, a specific mandate to resolve the problems of solvency and liquidity being experienced by the financial sector.
So, in other words, Ms. Val, you are saying when things began to fall apart for the financial sector, the government stepped in to try to remedy the situation.
That's right.
So, what went wrong?
Well, in a nutshell, and I'm going to try to be very, very succinct and at the same time encapsulate it in a way for people to understand what really went down, and that we will try our best as Black people, as a nation, as the whole diaspora, to never ever allow something like this financial meltdown that hit Jamaica like a tsunami to ever happen to future generations. So, following the bank run on the local financial sector and the run by people cashing out their insurance policies, it left these banks insolvent. And insolvent simply means they were drained of money. There was no money left when people ran in panic, as we said in the last episode, to withdraw their monies from the bank and to cash their insurance policies. And this money, they kept it under the bed, in boxes, all over the place. And in an effort to resolve this situation, the government set about trying to protect the locally owned businesses by promising to help them to get back more cash into their coffers and so become solvent once more. If you have no cash, then you have no liquidity. And if you have no liquidity, then the bank cannot lend to people who want money to borrow to keep their business afloat. And it cannot take money from the people who want a safe place to put their money. So the government had to try to do something twofold. One, to help the people who thought they were going to lose their money, which was why there was a run on the bank. And secondly, to get back money into the central bank and all the local banks so that they will have cash or liquidity in the banks once more to do the service that banks do, which is to lend money to people who come and borrow or to save money for people who come and deposit their money.
They were just acting responsibly.
They
at
were
that
trying,
time.
yes, they were trying, in all fairness, FinSAC was trying to do the right thing, which was to help get the banks and take out the fear from the persons who had lost confidence in the financial sector.
So that was their mandate.
Yes.
And they were trying to carry out their mandate, do you
Yes.
think? So how did things go so horribly wrong?
It went horribly wrong when FinSAC did not carry out this mandate, which was to help. Instead of helping, what they did was to take the assets and the collateral that these banks had for their customers, and they sold it to overseas interests.
Ms. Val, in other words, instead of focusing their attention on helping the local businesses, they were more concerned with recovering money.
In answering that question, Dorrit, I have to be very careful, so I want to keep on track. Will you help me, please? And stick to the point that I have written down in black and white. It says here, what really caused the financial crisis? It was that the findings done by companies showed that all the major domestic banks and insurance companies were insolvent. That's why there was a crisis. There was no money in these banks due mainly to the crisis that occurred when people panicked and withdrew their monies from these local banks.
The bank run.
The bank
And I
run.
suppose the same thing happened with insurance companies,
Yes.
people closing out their policies
Yes.
and all. Yeah.
Taking their insurance policies and getting cash in return. So when they did that, it meant the insurance companies would also become cashless or insolvent. So what really happened is because FinSAC failed to carry out its mandate, which was to help the local banks and help depositors, instead, no one, according to Dr. Chen Young, who owned a group of companies, a bank, merchant banks, etc., that they were destroyed, he said that what FinSAC failed to do was to carry out its mandate. He goes on, I can think of no financial institution where it worked with owners or management to return these banks and insurance companies to viability, another word for profitability. And that was what really caused the crisis.
So let me understand, Ms. Val. FinSAC was supposed to help these banks and insurance companies return to solvency so they could now service their clientele. So, Ms. Val, just remind us again who FinSAC was supposed to help and why was it they were not able to carry out this mandate?
What FinSAC did was to seize or take over all of these companies, these banks, these companies that were insolvent, all these people who couldn't pay their loans, their companies were taken over by FinSAC.
Hold it there a little bit, Ms. Val. So you're saying FinSAC had the mandate to return the banks and insurance companies to solvency.
Yes.
But you also said that they didn't have enough money to cover what they would need to do for all these companies.
In other words, it couldn't stretch in Jamaican terminology.
So then you said they tried to help out some other depositors.
Yes.
Uh, who were these depositors that they tried to help? No.
Companies, and I think I had given a list of the companies in the last episode,
Yes.
like Mutual Life,
Yes.
Island Life, Time Store. They seized all of the assets of these banks that they had taken over, and all of the insurance companies. And assets of a bank not only means what the bank owns, but it means all of the collateral that the banks are holding for people who borrowed money from the bank.
So let us get that clear, like you're explaining it to my little grandson. FinSAC was to deal with the banks, but having failed to deal with the banks because of and insurance companies because they didn't have enough money to cover all of that, they then took over the bank with all the assets and everything, including the customers' assets that they
That's
were
correct.
using for collateral.
So people who wanted to borrow money from the bank would pledge their homes, their cars, their artwork.
That is the collateral.
That is the
And
collateral.
so FinSAC took over all of this.
Yes, but it's not as simple as that. There were some people who had actually paid off their loans and never got back the titles for their homes that they were keeping as collateral.
You mentioned that in the last episode. In other words, there were people who did not owe the bank anything.
That's
they just
correct.
failed to collect
Their
titles. And these were also taken over
by
FinSAC.
When FinSAC acquired these banks and insurance companies along with the other assets that they're holding as collateral from borrowers.
So it was indiscriminatory. They didn't look at.
This is a travesty of justice. This is why FinSAC should never ever be allowed to repeat itself in nowhere on this planet Earth.
So
and it gets worse.
I was about to ask if these people who lost their assets tried to do anything about it. But you say it get worse.
It got worse in that a group of persons who the then finance minister dared to call bad debtors, we dealt with that in the last episode, tried to appeal to the government to buy back their collateral, not at the full dollar, but at something like 25 cents in the dollar. Somehow or other, the government of the day rejected their offer, even though down payment, I think it was, I'm not going to quote the amount, but monies were paid down to make this prospect or this proposal become feasible or workable, and it was rejected. Why was it rejected? It was rejected because a foreign collection agency, they call it a bank, offered them terms that apparently were more attractive than the ones the local debtors or the local so-called bad debtors had offered.
So tell me something now. Their offer, the foreign people's offer, was it better because they were offering foreign exchange? Is that a yes or a no?
This is where it gets painful because the local group had offered 25 cents in the dollar. And this foreign so-called bank offered 5 cents in the dollar.
So their 5 cent had more weight than your 25 cents.
Apparently, because from what I'm made to understand, this foreign company would give them a commission on every earthly asset that and collateral that they sold. So in other words, what there's
Unbelievable as it
this
is.
is unbelievable, but the evidence is all there. And I don't want to take up much more time, but I'll just say that people need to go and not only just read my book, but they also need to hear from other persons who have written on this FinSac. I just want to
Like
see.
that, what you told us about the last time, the student from Yale
Yes.
University.
Yes. In the Yale University case study, he actually gives a lot of facts and figures. It's not an easy document if you are a lay person, but you get the impression that usury could have been involved. And the bank that our assets and collateral were sold to was not really a bank, it was a collection agency.
Hold that point there, Miss Well. Hold that point.
Yes, ma'am.
That is a mouthful or two. So you're saying that it was a foreign
Collection
agency.
Yes.
Now, how did this foreign collection agency get involved in a domestic situation?
The law, the Money Lending Act, was manipulated by the then government I don't want to say anything off the cuff, so let me read.
This one is a hard pill to swallow.
It's very hard, and this is why I'm so disappointed.
What was that statement that somebody made about it was the biggest transfer of wealth?
Lord, I don't want to say anything off the cuff, Darrett, because everything can be proven. There is evidence for what I'm saying. And I'd just like to read here about the Texas connection. This is one of the reasons why I'm so disappointed that our young people don't seem to have any interest in current affairs. They're the ones who are going to have to solve this mystery and clean this mess. I don't know how that is going to happen. Otherwise, the diaspora is going to remain just as it is if we don't do something to correct these injustices. Here goes. The question is being asked, isn't it a fact that a group of Jamaican investors offered to purchase the FinSac portfolio for US $22 million with a deposit made of US $1 million? Why was this offer rejected, as we said earlier? A Texas debt collection agency by the name of Beal Bank were able to purchase this portfolio that had a US value of $393 million. That was what the portfolio was worth in US dollars. And they were sold to this US Beal Bank, which is really a Texas debt collection agency, for a mere $23 million, or 5 cents in the dollar.
But local businesses who lost what they had offered 22 million.
Precisely. And yet they're selling something that values $393 million for 23 million.
To foreigners.
To foreigners. But as I said, it keeps getting worse. It was revealed that approximately 24,000 loan accounts, that is people who borrowed money, 24,000 of them, their accounts were sold to the Texas debt collector Dennis Jocelyn, the late Dennis Jocelyn. And guess what? He is the founder of the Jamaica, let me repeat, the Jamaica Redevelopment Foundation, JRF.
You're talking about a foreigner here.
A Texan, to be more precise.
Wow.
And this JRF, it was further revealed to be a subsidiary of the foreign collection agency, Beale Bank from Texas. And they contracted this late Dennis Jocelyn, somebody else is doing it now because he has died, to carry out the loan collections. We're talking about Jamaican collateral, Jamaican homes, Jamaican properties, Jamaican cars, Jamaican artwork, and all other assets owned by the bank and by their
or we should say
borrowers.
being held by the bank,
Being
because
held,
some
that's
of them
right.
should have been taken out because they were already cleared.
Exactly.
So we're going, this is 1700s again, where whatever black people owned was taken away by law, sold and given to the rich. And what was the statement again, Miss Val?
Oh, yes. It was then I believe he was the Minister of Education at the time, who had the gall to admit that what happened in the Jamaica financial meltdown was the greatest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich since slavery. So it ties in that we cannot ignore history. It keeps repeating itself because we just won't learn it.
And I wouldn't say he had the gall. I would say he was speaking truth, because that's exactly what it was. And it's a continuation of what started way back then in slavery. Take what the poor have and give it to the rich. But question, Miss Val, isn't usury, is that how you pronounce it?
Usury, yes.
Illegal in the US, where this corporation came from?
I believe so, because in the document that I could not put in my book because I was told, let me not bother to go there to say what I was told. Let me just read you in that chapter that I had to rip from out of my book, Too Black to Succeed, the FinSAC Experience. It says here, did the Minister of Finance at the time commit an illegal act? Because in clause 3.1.b and C, B and C of the agreement, references are made to JRF as a corporation formed under the laws of the state of Texas. How can that be? Miss Dorrit, how can it be? And how did he do that? We're asking the question again. Is it a fact that this foreign Beale Bank subsequently formed Jamaica Redevelopment Foundation in the state of Texas as well as in Jamaica, and that the Jamaican government, through the then Minister of Finance, granted them exemption from the Money Lending Act. And in so doing, although the portfolios sold to them were supposed to be principal only, as was taken from the banks, it allowed this foreign collection agency to use the principal plus interest and penalties accumulated from the banks and to continue to charge the debtors additional interest and penalties, an action that is illegal in the United States and especially in Texas, the first state to enact laws for consumer protection, reference specifically accrual of interest on non-performing loans. You are collecting interest on non-performing loans.
So, Miss Val, you are telling us, or what you're showing us, is that a foreign entity was allowed by our own government to come in and scrape up everything that ordinary Jamaicans had worked for 100 years or more. Wealth had now come back to some ordinary Jamaicans through their hard labor. So now it was time to cut them down again.
Just like they did in the 17th century, as
In
you
the
reminded us.
1700s and the 1800s, from the 1600s. So it's, again, we talk about generational wealth. Something was done again this time to ensure that there is no way you would have something to leave for your children and grandchildren.
And this is why I'm so sad, Dorrit, that our young people have taken no interest whatsoever, that there is nothing for some of them to even think of owning in the future to help them to become, what should we say, generationally wealthy, that the wealth stays in their black family.
It can't stay, because if it is there, it will be taken out. And then, Miss Val, we have now, this is where we use the term gall of some people to say that it's because we have no ambition that we don't own anything. And when we see those hundreds of young men out on the street with nothing, because they were born with nothing, they were brought up with nothing, and what are they to make out of nothing? So we make the laws to label them criminal. And remember, it was when we were emancipated, the prison was the safest place for us. So here we go again in this vicious cycle of taking everything black people have and giving it to others.
Always others. Always, always others. And there are some black people right now watching us who cannot connect the dots to realize that when 44,000 employers, when 44,000 producers and manufacturers are destroyed, what becomes of their employees?
They go out on the street because they can't pay rent, they can't buy food, they can't do anything, and their children become the ones that the police hunt and shoot down in the streets.
And we can't even connect the dots to see that a man has to live, whether he's gonna live well or he's going to do badly, it doesn't matter. He has to eat, find shelter and clothes. Where is it to come from? And then we talk about what? Scamming?
That's what I was about to mention, that if he can't pick up the gun, then he uses the brain that
Precisely.
he has and do some scamming.
And we are brilliant people. We find ways and means to always survive. And those people who do not wish black people to succeed, they're the ones who are forever castigating black people, especially the young people, as thugs and gangsters and everything that is bad they put on top of these people when they are the ones oppressing and suppressing them.
Thank you, Miss Val. And I have an appeal Give our young people a chance. You took it from us, but allow them to survive. Give them a chance at life. And Valerie Dixon did not write this book out of pleasure. She wrote it out of pain that it may help somebody else.
And what is worse, when we talk about generation and generational wealth, would you believe, audience, that these people have the audacity to hide the report from the FinSAC inquiry, that's what it was called, to look into how these people were able to sell our, and I'm making it personal now, our collateral, our lands, our houses, our everything we owned to their friends and cohorts at fire sale prices. So it is bad enough that they sold our assets to foreign interests, but to also be complicit in owning what they never worked for. Now we understand why corruption is so rampant in our country and throughout Africa and the entire United States, no exception, as well as the entire diaspora. To my mind, Dorrit, this, I believe, is why our young people are so apathetic towards anything that is about current affairs, current events. They don't even care that they have no future. And so we've come to the end of yet another episode, 5B, of the podcast series, Everything They Taught Us Was a Lie. And all those people who thought that 44,000 Jamaicans who had their businesses didn't know how to run business, and as a result were destroyed, that too was a lie.
And once again, our friends and listeners, I just want to remind you that we want to talk with you. So please ask your questions. Give us your answers and your questions and your feedback. We want to hear from you. And please remember to follow us on Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram. Talk to us now, please. Thank you.